Manhattan mornings had a special kind of cruelty. The sun rose with indifference, casting long shadows between buildings that seemed to stretch toward the clouds with arrogance. Streets filled with people who moved like they were racing against time itself, each one convinced their destination mattered more than anyone else's. Natalie Brooks gripped her steering wheel so hard her knuckles turned white. She had been circling the underground parking structure of Westbrook Financial Tower for 20 minutes, watching luxury cars slip into spaces that seemed to appear and vanish like mirages. Her ancient Toyota Corolla coughed and sputtered, as if protesting the company it was forced to keep among the Mercedes and BMWs. The last chance this job meant everything. After 2 years of struggling through 3 part-time positions, drowning in student debt, and watching her mother work herself into exhaustion just to keep their small apartment, Natalie had finally caught a break. Executive assistant to the CFO of Westbrook Financial, good salary, real benefits, a chance to breathe, but she had to make it through the front door first. Her phone showed 8:47 a.m. Orientation started at 9 a.m. sharp. The email had been clear. Punctuality reflects professionalism. Being late on the first day would be like showing up to a first date wearing pajamas. Natalie turned down the ramp to level 4, her heart sinking with each full row she passed. And then, like a miracle delivered by a universe that occasionally remembered she existed, she saw it. A perfect spot near the elevator bay, empty and waiting. Illuminated by the harsh, fluorescent lights like a stage, she flipped on her turn signal and began easing her car forward. Careful and deliberate. The theft, that's when the silver Aston Martin appeared. It came from nowhere. Moving with the kind of confidence that suggested the driver had never once considered the possibility of being wrong about anything. The sleek vehicle glided past her and slid smoothly into her parking space with surgical precision. For 3 full seconds, Natalie sat frozen, her mouth hanging open. Then fury ignited in her chest like a match striking gasoline. She slammed her car into park, yanked the door open so hard it bounced back and marched straight toward the Aston Martin. Her sensible heels clicked against the concrete with sharp, angry percussion. The driver's door opened, and a man stepped out. He was tall, probably 6'2", with dark hair styled with the kind of casual perfection that probably required an expensive barber and 15 minutes of careful arrangement. His charcoal suit fit him like it had been sewn onto his body by Italian tailors who wept with joy at the privilege. Everything about him screamed money, power, the absolute certainty that the world would bend to accommodate him. Natalie hated him on sight. The confrontation? Are you kidding me right now? She said, her voice echoing off the concrete walls. The man turned to face her, with the expression of someone who had just noticed a mildly interesting insect. His eyes were a striking gray blue, cold as winter ocean water. One eyebrow lifted with subtle amusement. "I beg your pardon?" His voice was smooth, cultured, with the kind of effortless authority that came from a lifetime of being listened to. That was my spot. Natalie pointed at her car, still sitting with its turn signal blinking pathetically. "I had my signal on. I was right there." "I saw an available space," he replied with infuriating calm. "I parked in it." That's typically how parking works. Natalie's jaw dropped. "You saw me. You had to have seen me. What I saw was an opportunity," he said, already turning away to reach into his car for a leather briefcase that probably cost more than her entire month's rent. "Perhaps you should have moved faster." Something inside Natalie snapped, the outburst faster. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Let me guess. You've never had to fight for anything in your entire life, have you? Everything just appears for you. Parking spots, jobs, probably entire companies." He turned back to face her fully now, and something flickered in those cold eyes. Surprise, maybe? Or irritation that she was still talking. "You don't know anything about me," he said quietly. "I know enough," Natalie shot back, her voice rising. "I know you drive a car that costs more than most people make in 5 years. I know that suit is custom-tailored. I know you think the rules don't apply to you because they probably never have." She stepped closer, her anger overriding every bit of common sense, screaming at her to stop talking. I know that you looked at me, saw someone you considered beneath you, and decided my time doesn't matter because I'm not wearing designer clothes or driving a car that looks like it belongs in a James Bond movie. I know that people like you move through the world taking whatever you want and never once considering who you're stepping on to get it. The dismissal for a long moment, he just stared at her. Something complicated moved across his face, too quick to identify. Then it was gone, replaced by a mask of complete indifference. He asked. No, actually, Natalie said, her chest heaving. I hope whatever meeting you're rushing to goes terribly. I hope someone important sees exactly what kind of person you really are. He looked at her for one more second, and she could have sworn she saw something almost like regret flash through his expression. Good luck with your new position, he said softly. Then he walked away, his footsteps echoing as he headed toward the elevators. Natalie stood there, shaking with adrenaline and rage, watching him disappear. Only when the elevator doors closed did she check her phone. 8:54 a.m. Her heart plummeted. She sprinted back to her car, raced down 3 more levels, found a spot in the darkest corner of the garage, and ran for the elevators in shoes that were already raising blisters. She burst into the orientation room at 9:03 a.m., breathless and sweating. Just as a woman in a crisped navy suit was welcoming everyone to Westbrook Financial, Natalie collapsed into the nearest empty chair, trying to steady her breathing while her heart hammered against her ribs like it was trying to escape. The morning had already been a disaster. She had no idea it was about to get infinitely worse. The conference room felt too cold. Natalie sat in her chair, trying to ignore the way her blouse stuck to her back with nervous sweat. Around her, 12 other new employees sat with perfect posture, their notebooks open, their expressions eager and professional. They all looked like they belonged here, like they had woken up that morning confident and prepared, not screaming at strangers in parking garages. The woman at the front of the room smiled with the kind of warmth that never quite reached her eyes. Her name tag read Victoria Chen, Human Resources Director. Everything about her was precise. Her navy suit, her pearl earrings, the way her dark hair sat in a flawless twist at the base of her neck. Welcome to Westbrook Financial, Victoria said, advancing to the next slide. We are thrilled to have such talented individuals joining our team. Before we discuss your individual roles, I want to give you some context about the company culture and leadership philosophy that makes this organization exceptional. Natalie tried to focus, but her mind kept replaying the parking garage confrontation, the way that man had looked at her with such dismissive calm, the expensive watch on his wrist catching the fluorescent light, the way he had walked away like she was nothing more than an inconvenient interruption to his perfectly scheduled morning. She should have kept her mouth shut. She should have just found another parking spot. But no, she had to go full righteous fury on a complete stranger because she was stressed and tired, and so sick of watching people with money treat the world like their personal playground. The slide that stopped. Time Westbrook Financial was established 35 years ago, Victoria continued, and has grown into one of the most respected investment firms on the East Coast. That success is due in large part to visionary leadership, particularly from our current CEO, who took over the company 3 years ago at the age of 31. She clicked to the next slide. Natalie's entire world tilted sideways. On the massive screen behind Victoria was a professional. A photograph of the man from the parking garage. Same sharp jawline. Same piercing gray-blue eyes. Same expression of complete control. But this time he wore a slight smile. The lighting made him look less like an arrogant stranger and more like someone from a magazine cover. The text beside his photo read, Julian Westbrook, Chief Executive Officer. Natalie stopped breathing. No. Her vision tunneled. Sound became muffled, like someone had wrapped her head in cotton. She was vaguely aware that Victoria was still talking. Words about leadership and innovation and company values, but Natalie couldn't process any of it. Her brain had short-circuited, stuck on one endless loop of realization the man she had yelled at in the parking garage was not just some entitled executive. He was the executive. He was the CEO of the entire company. Her boss. Well, her boss's boss's boss. But still, oh God, the spiral Natalie's hands started to shake. She pressed them flat against her thighs, trying to steady herself. But her whole body felt like it was vibrating at a frequency only she could detect. I just told the CEO of Westbrook Financial that he's a privileged jerk who takes whatever he wants, she thought, her internal voice reaching levels of panic that should probably require medical intervention. I told him I hoped his meeting went terribly. I told him people like him step on everyone else. I basically called him a selfish, entitled monster to his face. On her first day, before she had even made it through orientation, this was not just career suicide. This was career murder, dismemberment, and burial in an unmarked grave. Mr. Westbrook believes that character is revealed not in grand gestures but in small moments, Victoria was saying, her voice cutting through Natalie's spiral of doom. He judges people not by their resumes but by their integrity, their work ethic, and how they treat others, especially in situations where they think no one important is watching. Natalie wanted to sink through the floor and keep going until she reached the Earth's molten core. The summons now. I know this is a lot of information to absorb on your first day, Victoria said, smiling at the group. Let's take a 15-minute break. When we return, we'll discuss your specific departmental assignments and introduce you to your direct supervisors. There's coffee and refreshments in the hallway. Chairs scraped against the floor as people stood, already forming small clusters of nervous conversation. Natalie remained frozen in her seat, unable to move. Unable to think beyond the crushing weight of her own stupidity. A hand touched her shoulder. Natalie jumped, her heart launching into her throat. Victoria stood beside her, still wearing that professional smile. Natalie Brooks. Yes. The word came out as barely a whisper. Mr. Westbrook would like to see you in his office. The room suddenly felt airless. Now? Natalie managed double quotes, yes, now. Victoria's smile didn't waver, but there was something in her eyes. Pity, maybe. Or the look someone gives a condemned prisoner on their way to execution. I'll walk you up. Bring your things. This shouldn't take long. Natalie gathered her bag with numb fingers. The other new employees glanced at her with expressions ranging from curiosity to envy. They probably thought she was getting some special welcome. Some private audience with the CEO that marked her as exceptional. They had no idea she was being led to her own professional funeral. The elevator ride. The elevator to the executive floor was made of glass and chrome, with a view of Manhattan spreading out below as they ascended. Normally, Natalie would have found it breathtaking. Right now, she could barely see anything through the haze of panic. Victoria said nothing during the ride, just stood with perfect posture, watching the floor numbers climb. Natalie wanted to explain, to defend herself, to say something that might begin to repair the catastrophic damage she had done. But what could she possibly say? The elevator opened directly into a reception area that looked like it had been designed by someone who thought regular offices were too warm and welcoming. Everything was sharp angles, dark wood, and cold marble. Floor 2 ceiling windows offered a view of the city that probably cost more per square foot than most. People's homes, a receptionist with silver hair, and an expression of permanent disapproval glanced up from her computer. Ms. Brooks? Natalie nodded, not trusting her voice. Mr. Westbrook is expecting you. Go right in. The office. Victoria gave her one last look, something almost sympathetic in her eyes, then turned and walked back to the elevator, leaving Natalie standing alone in front of a massive door made of dark wood and frosted glass. Natalie raised her hand to knock. Her fingers trembled. Before she could make contact, a voice from inside said, "Come in." That voice, smooth, controlled, with an edge of something she couldn't quite identify. Natalie pushed the door open. Julian Westbrook's office was enormous, dominated by windows that made the whole city feel like a backdrop designed specifically for him. His desk was a sleek slab of black marble, organized with military precision. Behind it, backlit by the morning sun, sat the man himself. He had removed his suit jacket. His white shirt was rolled up at the sleeves, revealing forearms that suggested he did more than just sit behind a desk all day. He was reading something on his tablet, his expression focused and intense. When Natalie stepped inside, he looked up. Their eyes met. For 3 long seconds, neither of them spoke. The confrontation redux closed the door, Julian said finally. Natalie did, her hands shaking so badly she nearly missed the handle. Sit. She crossed the vast expanse of office space and lowered herself into one of the leather chairs facing his desk. It was so well made that sitting in it felt like an accusation of inadequacy. Everything in this office whispered the same message. You don't belong here. Julian set down his tablet and leaned back in his chair, studying her with those unsettling gray-blue eyes. He didn't look angry. He looked curious, like she was a puzzle he was trying to solve. So he said quietly, Natalie Brooks, executive assistant to Robert Chen, our CFO, Yale graduate, honors in economics. 2 years of work experience across multiple service industry positions. Excellent references. Impressive interview scores. He paused, letting the silence stretch. And apparently someone who confronts strangers in parking garages. Natalie's throat closed. Mr. Westbrook? He held up one hand, silencing her. I'm going to ask you a question, he said, and I want you to answer honestly. Do you stand by what you said to me this morning? Natalie blinked. That was not the question she had expected. She started, then stopped. What was the right answer here? Apologize profusely? Grovel? Pretend it never happened? But something in his eyes made her pause. He wasn't asking for an apology. He was asking if she meant it. Yes, she heard herself say. I was angry and unprofessional, but yes, I meant it. People with power and money often don't consider how their actions affect people who have less. That parking spot mattered to me. It was just convenience to you. Julian's expression didn't change. Interesting, he said softly. Then he did something Natalie never expected. He smiled. The proposal, Ms. Brooks. I'm going to make you an offer. You have 30 days to prove that your passion and your principles translate into actual professional excellence. 30 days to show me that the fire I saw this morning can be channeled into something productive. If you succeed, your position becomes permanent with a significant salary increase. He leaned forward, his eyes never leaving hers. If you fail, you're gone. No second chances. No excuses. Do we have an understanding? Natalie's heart hammered against her ribs. She'd expected to be fired. Instead, she was being given a chance. A terrifying, high-stakes, completely unexpected chance. Yes, she whispered. We have an understanding. Julian nodded once. Then get back to orientation. Your 30 days start now. Natalie stood on shaking legs and walked to the door. Just as she reached it, his voice stopped her. Ms. Brooks? She turned back. For what it's worth, Julian said, his expression unreadable. You were right. About the parking spot. I saw you. I took it anyway. That was wrong. Then he returned to his tablet. Dismissing her, Natalie left his office feeling like she had just survived something that should have killed her. The game had changed, and somehow, impossibly, she was still playing. The next morning, Natalie arrived at Westbrook Financial at 6:45 a.m., a full hour before her official start time. She had barely slept, her mind racing through scenarios and strategies, replaying that strange conversation with Julian Westbrook until the words lost all meaning. 30 days to prove herself. 30 days where every decision, every action, every word would be measured against an invisible standard she didn't fully understand. Robert Chen, CFO and her direct supervisor, turned out to be a man in his late 50s with kind eyes hidden behind wire-rimmed glasses and a permanently worried expression. He reminded Natalie of her high school calculus teacher, someone who genuinely wanted people to succeed but had seen too many fail to get his hopes up. Your first assignment, he said, sliding a thick folder across his desk, is to compile a comprehensive analysis of our quarterly investment portfolio performance. cross-reference with market trends, identify anomalies, and prepare a presentation for the executive board. You have 4 days. Natalie opened the folder. Her stomach dropped. There were hundreds of pages of financial data, charts that looked like abstract art, and terminology she would need to research just to understand what questions to ask. For days, she repeated. Robert gave her a sympathetic smile. Welcome to Westbrook Financial. Coffee machine is on the 3rd floor. You're going to need it. The late nights, day 3, 11:47 p.m. Natalie sat in her small cubicle, surrounded by empty coffee cups and crumpled papers covered in notes and calculations. The office was dark except for her desk lamp and the glow of her computer screen. Her eyes burned from staring at spreadsheets for 16 hours straight. She had found something. A pattern in the data that didn't make sense. A series of small discrepancies that individually meant nothing, but collectively suggested either a calculation error in their system or something more concerning. She had spent the last 6 hours verifying her findings, running the numbers again and again. Terrified she was wrong, but increasingly certain she wasn't. The sound of footsteps made her look. Up, Julian Westbrook stood at the entrance to her cubicle, still wearing his suit from the day, though his tie was loosened and his sleeves were rolled up. He looked tired, human in a way she hadn't seen before. It's almost midnight, he said. I know. Natalie rubbed her eyes. I'm almost finished. Robert told me what he assigned you. That project usually takes new analysts a week. Sometimes 2. Then I guess I should work faster. She didn't mean it to sound defiant. But exhaustion had stripped away her filter. Julian studied her for a long moment. What did you find? Natalie hesitated. How did you know I found something? Because you're still here. If the analysis was straightforward, you would have gone home hours ago. What is it? She turned her laptop screen toward him and began explaining the discrepancies. Watching his expression shift from mild curiosity to sharp attention, he moved closer, leaning over her shoulder to examine the data, and she caught the faint scent of expensive cologne mixed with coffee. This suggests our automated trading algorithm has a flaw, he said quietly. Yes, a small one. But over time, it's costing the company approximately $40,000 per quarter. Julian straightened, his expression unreadable. Good work. Include this in your presentation. Robert will want to know immediately. Started to walk away, then paused. Ms. Brooks go home? Get some sleep. You can't prove anything if you collapse from exhaustion. I will. Soon. He shook his head slightly, something almost like amusement flickering across his face. You're stubborn. You say that like it's a bad thing. In moderation, it's an asset. Taken too far, it becomes self-destruction. Learn the difference. Then he was gone, his footsteps echoing through the empty office. Natalie sat there for another moment, staring at the space where he had stood, feeling something shift inside her chest that she didn't want to examine too closely. The presentation day for 2 p.m., the executive boardroom felt like a courtroom. 12 senior executives sat around a massive conference table, their expressions ranging from polite interest to barely concealed skepticism. Robert Chen gave her an encouraging nod from his seat. At the head of the table, Julian sat with perfect posture, his face a mask of professional neutrality. Natalie's hands shook as she advanced to the first slide. Good afternoon. Over the past 4 days, I've conducted a comprehensive analysis of our quarterly investment portfolio performance. Her voice wavered slightly, but she pushed through. The overall returns are strong, consistent with market trends, and our strategic positioning. However, I discovered an anomaly that requires immediate attention. She walked them through her findings, explaining the algorithm flaw with as much clarity as she could muster. Some executives leaned forward, interested. Others frowned, already formulating objections. Julian's expression never changed, but she felt the weight of his attention like a physical presence. When she finished, there was a moment of silence. Then Marcus Brennan, the chief technology officer, a man with silver hair and a reputation for destroying weak presentations, spoke up. You're suggesting our proprietary trading system, which has been operational for 3 years, has a fundamental flaw that no one else caught. I'm not suggesting it, Natalie said, meeting his gaze. I'm demonstrating it with data. This could be a statistical anomaly. Random variance. I tested for that. The probability of this pattern occurring randomly is less than 0.3%. Marcus leaned back, studying her with new interest. How long have you been with the company? For days. A ripple of surprise moved through the room. Julian spoke for the first time. Marcus, have your team verify Ms. Brooks' findings. If she's correct, I want a full system audit and a fix implemented within 2 weeks. He looked directly at Natalie. If she's wrong, we'll know that too. It wasn't praise, but it wasn't dismissal either. It was respect, grudging and professional. Natalie had passed her first real test, the shift week. 3 brought a different kind of challenge. A major client, Henderson Global, was threatening to pull their account over concerns about market volatility and portfolio management strategy. Julian assigned Natalie to assist with the client retention team, which meant long strategy sessions, endless revisions of presentation materials. In phone calls that stretched past midnight, she discovered that Julian worked more hours than anyone else in the company. He was always the first to arrive and the last to leave. He remembered details about every account, every employee, every ongoing project. And slowly, through late-night work sessions and brief conversations in empty hallways, she began to see past the cold exterior to something more complex underneath. One evening, working late on the Henderson proposal, she found him standing at his office window, staring out at the city lights. "Do you ever sleep?" she asked from the doorway. He turned, surprised to see her. "Occasionally, do you?" "Not lately." She stepped into the office, carrying the revised presentation materials. "I have the updated numbers you wanted." Julian took the folder but didn't open it. Instead, he gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Sit. Tell me something." "What? Why do you care so much?" "This is just a job. You could do the minimum, collect your paycheck, and go home at 5, like most people. Why push yourself like this?" Natalie considered lying, giving some professional answer about career advancement and personal growth. But she was too tired for pretense. "My mother worked 3 jobs to put me through college," she said quietly. "She cleaned offices at night, waited tables during the day, and somehow still found time to make sure I had everything I needed. She sacrificed everything so I could have opportunities she never did. This isn't just a job to me. It's proof that her sacrifice meant something. It's proof that someone like me belongs in places like this." Julian was silent for a long moment. "Your mother sounds remarkable," he said finally. "Hey, she is, in the parking spot that first morning. That's why you reacted so strongly. It wasn't about the space itself." Natalie nodded. "It was about being dismissed. Being treated like I didn't matter because I didn't look like I belonged. I've dealt with that my entire life. I got tired of staying quiet about it." "I'm glad you didn't stay quiet," Julian said softly. She looked up, startled. "That fire you showed me, that refusal to accept casual cruelty, that's rare. Most people learn to swallow their anger, to smile and move on. You didn't. You stood your ground, even though you had everything to lose." He paused. "I respected that, even when it was directed at me. Especially when it was directed at me." Something in the air between them changed, became charged with an energy that made Natalie's breath catch. Week 4, Day 26. Henderson Globalist CEO Thomas Henderson arrived for a final meeting to decide whether to stay with Westbrook Financial or move his substantial portfolio elsewhere. $300 million hung in the balance. The presentation went smoothly until Henderson asked a question about projected returns in emerging markets that no one on the team could adequately answer. Natalie watched the meeting start to unravel, saw Henderson's expression shift from consideration to doubt. She spoke without thinking. "Mr. Henderson, if I may?" Every eye in the room turned to her. "I spent last week analyzing emerging market trends specifically for accounts of your size and risk profile. The short answer to your question is that projected returns in emerging markets carry higher volatility, but also higher potential upside. approximately 18 to 24% over 3 years, compared to 12 to 15% in established markets. However, our strategy would be to create a balanced portfolio that captures that upside while hedging against currency fluctuations and political instability, she continued, walking him through specific scenarios and data points, aware that Julian was watching her with an intensity that made her skin warm. When she finished, Henderson smiled for the first time all meeting. Now that's the kind of detailed thinking I expect from Westbrook Financial. Miss Brooks, was it? Yes, sir. Impressive work. He looked at Julian. You've got talented people here. That matters. We'll stay. After Henderson left, after the team dispersed with relieved congratulations, Julian caught Natalie in the hallway outside the conference room. Walk with me, he said. They rode the elevator in silence to the top floor, then stepped out onto a private terrace she didn't know existed. The city spread before them, millions of lights against the darkness. It's beautiful and vast and indifferent. The truth you saved that account, Julian said, standing at the railing. The team saved it. I just answered a question. Don't diminish what you did. He turned to face her. Your 30 days are up tomorrow. Natalie's heart clenched. She had been so focused on the work that she had almost forgotten about the deadline, the impossible challenge that had started all of this. And she managed. And you exceeded every expectation I had. You found flaws no one else caught. You worked harder than people who have been here for years. You saved a major account. You've proved that your passion translates into excellence. Stepped closer. Your position is permanent. With a 20% salary increase and a promotion to junior analyst, relief flooded through her, so intense it almost hurt. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me. You earned this. Julian paused, and something vulnerable flickered across his face. Natalie, I need to tell you something. That morning in the parking garage, I did see you. I saw your turn signal. I took that spot anyway because I was running late, and I made a selfish choice. You were right about everything you said to me. Julian, let me finish. You were right, but you were also wrong about one thing. You assumed I've never had to fight for anything. The truth is, I inherited this company at 31 because my father died of a heart attack at his desk, working himself to death, trying to prove he was worthy of a legacy that was handed to him. I've spent every day since trying not to become him, trying to build something meaningful instead of just protecting what I was given. But somewhere along the way, I forgot what it feels like to struggle. I forgot what it means to people who don't have safety nets and second chances. He looked at her with an openness that took her breath away. You reminded me. You made me angry and uncomfortable, and you forced me to see myself through someone else's eyes. That parking spot was the best thing that never happened to me. Natalie laughed despite herself, feeling tears prick at her eyes. Are you saying I should yell at you more often? I'm saying don't ever stop being exactly who you are. Don't let this place, or people like me, make you smaller. He reached out, hesitated, then gently took her hand. And I'm saying that somewhere between that first terrible morning and now, I started looking forward to seeing you, to hearing what you think, to watching you challenge everything and everyone, including me. Her breath caught. Julian, we work together. I work for you. I know. And if that's a line you don't want to cross, I understand. Your career, your boundaries, they matter more than my feelings. But I needed you to know. I needed to be honest about what's happening here. Natalie looked at their joined hands, at the city lights reflecting in his eyes. At the vulnerability in his expression that had taken weeks to appear, she thought about her mother's sacrifices. About the girl who had screamed at a stranger in a parking garage. About the woman she was becoming in this steel and glass tower. I started looking forward to seeing you too, she said softly. Even when you're being impossible. Julian smiled, really smiled, and it transformed his entire face. So what happens now? He asked. Now? Natalie squeezed his hand. Now, we figure it out. Together, carefully, with lots of HR. Consultations, and probably some very awkward conversations about workplace relationships. He laughed. The sound genuine and warm. I can work with that. They stood there on the terrace. Hands joined, the city spreading beneath them like a promise of everything yet to come. The parking spot confrontation that should have ended her career had instead become the beginning of something neither of them expected. Sometimes, the worst mornings lead to the best stories. And sometimes, when pride meets power, both discover something more valuable than either could claim alone. They discover truth, transformation, and the courage to see each other clearly. The end.